Office for Resident Coordination of the United Nations in Equatorial Guinea. Mr. President, Equatorial Guinea in the last few months has experienced civic insecurity with robberies, murders, and harassment being the order of the day. And to combat this scourge, my government established the national plan to combat crime called the Cleanup Operation. Its implementation has been completed in the country, involving detaining and arresting various young people involved in gangs and criminal organizations throughout our country. With this plan, the government has shouldered the responsibility required to put an end to this scourge, which has sown fear among its citizens, and to give solutions to the calls for justice, the work to combat crime, and to guarantee the rights of all without discrimination. Equatorial Guinea is a party to the International United Nations Convention against concern facing the inhabitants of Equatorial Guinea, because a great segment of the population was already living with anxiety and fear because of the threat of juvenile crime. Thanks to the cleanup operation governmental plan, there has been a positive impact of that in Equatorial Guinea, and the usual serenity has returned to our society. In its work to combat corruption, above and beyond the fact that Equatorial Guinea acceded in 2018 to the Convention of the United Nations Against Corruption, and also the positive activities carried out as part of this struggle, my government has redoubled its efforts, putting in place in the country the Accountability Court, which is a constitutional body of a technical nature with full autonomy, and it is intended to monitor transparency in the fiscal and administration of, the fiscal management exercised by the administration, individuals and entities who manage funds or public goods in accordance with Article 11 of the Organic Law No. 5, 2012, dated November 12th, which regulates its functioning. Mr. President, a Human Rights Commission made up of members of the National Red Cross will, at the end of this year, be carrying out inspection visits in all prisons and police lockups to implement the special procedures of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention and Extrajudicial Cases. Mr. President, I wish to inform this august assembly that the institutional declaration adopted by the National Parliament urges the government of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea to hold presidential, legislative, and municipal elections jointly in 2022. In relation to this, all of the political stakeholders in the country met on September 8th to confirm this declaration and to decide on the holding of these elections. In conclusion, I wish to reaffirm, and I indeed do reaffirm, the Republic of Equatorial Guinea's commitment to promoting, guaranteeing, protecting, and further embedding human rights, which today make up our state policy. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, for your presence and for your statement. We'll have a brief pause, and we'll continue in a few minutes with the interactive dialogue on the Office of the High Commissioner's Office on the situation in Sri Lanka, followed by the interactive dialogue with the special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan. And we have the Vice President, the Ambassador of Germany, who will be replacing me to conclude this first meeting of the 51st session of the Human Rights Council.
A very warm welcome also from my side. Welcome back to the Human Rights Council and to the new session of the Human Rights Council in autumn. I kindly ask delegates to take their seats. We will continue. Excellencies, distinguished participants, I hereby declare open the second meeting of the 51st session of the Human Rights Council. Excellencies, distinguished participants, we shall now continue the interactive dialogue on the report of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on the situation in Sri Lanka. We will continue with our list of speakers, and I give the floor to the representative of the European Union.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the European Union and its member states. The EU thanks the Office of the High Commissioner for the report, which we welcome. We reaffirm our commitment to human rights, reconciliation and accountability in Sri Lanka. The EU recognizes the challenges Sri Lanka is facing following months of protest and the recent change of government, while underlining the need of upholding all human rights and fundamental freedoms, especially freedom of opinion and expression of all persons in Sri Lanka, including persons and groups in vulnerable and marginalized situations. We also underline the need for effective and equal fulfillment of economic, social and cultural rights of all. The EU condemns the unwarranted use of force against peaceful demonstrators and calls upon Sri Lanka to suspend the Prevention of Terrorism Act until it is in full compliance with international human rights law and standards, and calls for accountability and immediate acts to end impunity. The EU encourages the government of Sri Lanka to remain engaged with the UN and international partners, as well as fully cooperate with the High Commissioner. The EU will continue to support Sri Lanka's efforts towards a fully inclusive dialogue on governance, rule of law, democratic values and devaluation and human rights. I thank you.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to Saudi Arabia on behalf of the Gulf Cooperation Council.
السيد الرئيس يتقدم بهذا البيان نيابة عن الدول.
Mr. President, I'm speaking on behalf of the member states of the GCC. Mr. President, the member states have taken note of the report of the High Commissioner on Sri Lanka. We have taken note of the efforts made by the government through its dialogue with the High Commissioner's office concerning the human rights situation. Against that backdrop, we would encourage them to respect international human rights and international human rights law in all actions, and to ensure that there is strengthened cooperation with member states which improve the human rights situation. We call for an improvement in human rights in this country, and we support better coordination between the government and the OHCHR to promote human rights. Mr. President, we would assert that the promotion of human rights is a responsibility which requires working together and positive cooperation in accordance with international human rights law and international humanitarian law. It's important to respect universality and objectivity to strengthen the capacity of countries to live up to their obligations in the area of human rights. Thank you very much.
Stein.
Liechtenstein thanks the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights for its report on promoting reconciliation, accountability, and human rights in Sri Lanka. We're concerned about the current situation in Sri Lanka.